You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is why some with mental health conditions are treatment resistant to medications. Whether it's Ritalin for ADHD, antipsychotics for those with a schizophrenia diagnosis, or antidepressants for those suffering nervous exhaustion, there are inevitably some people that do not respond well to the standard psychiatric medicinal treatments and who suffer greatly from their side effects. In fact, it is widely disputed these days whether any small improvements in the other cases are significant enough to be counted due to errors in testing and flaws in the studies. My special guest today is Dr. Fred Moss, a distinguished psychiatrist, mental health advocate, and innovative thinker with over 40 years of experience in the field. As the creator of Welcome to Humanity and the True Voice course, Dr. Fred empowers individuals to discover and express their true selves. He's also the author of Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, and Find Your True Voice. So welcome, Dr. Fred. Lovely to have you on board.
It's great to be here, Sandy. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Okay. My volume for you is a little bit low. Are you
Okay,
able
if I'm closer to the mic, it works better, I think.
It is better. Thank you.
Yeah.
So my first question is, why is the diagnosis of people with mental health issues, as described in the Psychiatry DSM manual, based on subjective observations and opinions? And what can go wrong with that kind of system and working out correct medicinal treatments for something that's very subjectively diagnosed?
Well, you're catching me on a good day at a good time in my life. So this is an interesting question. And here's the thing. I have a different stance on this than any psychiatrist you've ever interviewed, I'm quite certain, which is that I don't believe in diagnoses at all. Not at all. None of them. Not one of them. None of them. Not even that one. So here's the thing. I do have a diagnosis for you, though. You want to know your diagnosis?
Yeah.
Your diagnosis is Sandy Sanderson. That's your diagnosis. See, we're all living in a crazy world. We're living in a challenge-filled, obstacle-filled, hurdle-filled world. And what happened with this whole concept of diagnosis is that we start blaming the person who's experiencing discomfort for their discomfort, instead of realizing that discomfort is very much part of life, as is being depressed, or being anxious, or being afraid, or being scattered, or being awkward, or being hopeless, or being
Angry.
aimless, whatever you want to say. Or having, not accepting social cues, or being self-centered, or any of the different things that we now connect to a psychiatric diagnosis. So the DSM was not created by people who were interested in diagnosing people. The history of the DSM is very skewed, and looking at how the whole thing got created, it was not meant to be the Bible for psychiatry at any time. It was meant to code for insurance. And in coding for insurance, they slapped together a bunch of symptoms that doctors don't even use anymore to make diagnoses. That's just being honest. Here's what happens. You only have a few minutes to see a client, and they come in and they say the one thing they needed to say to get that particular diagnosis. Maybe I have a fear of impending doom. Oh, anxiety. Or I can't stop thinking about something. Oh, PTSD. Oh, I've been sad for a couple weeks. Oh, major depression. Oh, my mind races at night. Oh, bipolar disorder. We don't look at the DSM anyways. So the whole foundation is questionable to begin with, and we don't look at it. Now, here's the other thing. Medications, they don't work. Hello. They don't work. Just like you sort of mentioned in your introduction. What medications do more than anything is medications increase. Yes?
Yep, go ahead.
Medications induce, perpetuate, or frequently cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. So it doesn't matter which diagnosis you have. If you take medicines, it's not going to help you more than likely. Now, when it does help you, it's causing damage at the same time. So let's say you have a depression. Let's say you're feeling depressed and you take an antidepressant, you're pretty sure that it helped you. Well, what reason it helped you is it blunted out your whole life, including depression. So not only are you not feeling depression, but you're not feeling anything else either. And so it's kind of like this. If you had a mosquito bite on your elbow and you came to me and you're like, Dr. Fred, do you know anyone who works with mosquito bites on elbows? I'll be like, yeah, I do. You go 40 miles north of Brisbane and you'll find somebody. And then I give you the referral, and then you go to his office and he meets you at the door, and he's got his white coat on and a stethoscope over his neck and his glasses halfway down his nose, and he invites you in, and you give him, he says, okay, what's the problem? And you say, I think I have a mosquito bite on my elbow. It's bugging me really bad. Been here for 2 weeks. And he says, okay, let's see. So he does an examination, takes out his lenses, and looks at it. He goes, wow, this is a mosquito bite indeed. And you're like, well, see, I knew it. I'm so glad. And he goes, you've come to the right place. I'm a specialist. I have a 100% cure rate. He says, oh, great. I just want this thing gone. I'll do anything. He says, okay, we'll do it. So sit down. It's only going to hurt for a minute. And then he cuts off your arm at your shoulder. And then he says, come back in 2 weeks and we'll see that there's a mosquito bite on your elbow.
Which isn't there anymore.
It's not there anymore, and neither is the mosquito bite. But if you look at diseases that way, that's a success story.
Yeah.
If you stay focused on the mosquito bite, the itchy bump on your elbow, it will be gone. And if you don't veer back and look at what else left you and what other problems were created, you'll miss the fact that your whole arm was cut off. This is the way that psychiatric medicines are designed to work. Now, I love to give this disclaimer. I have to give it every podcast that asks me this question, which is, if there's a listener out there who's very sure that they are on the right diagnosis, the right treatment, the right therapy, and the right medicine, and they wouldn't trade it for the world because it's the best thing that ever happened to them, and they don't want to change directions because this is it, by all means, please keep doing exactly what you're doing, for sure. No problem. I'm not arguing with that person at all. If you reach that place about anything in life, you should keep doing it. If you really think you're at the pinnacle of your life in some particular area and absolutely wouldn't trade it for anything, please keep doing that. But the truth is, this conversation is for the hundreds of millions of people who don't believe that.
Who've been down the path and found it didn't work for them, so they keep looking for another answer.
Yeah, it's not going to come in the world of medicine. That's what we know. It's not going to come in the world of medicine because the world of medicine is meant to induce, increase, perpetuate, or frequently actually cause the symptoms it's marketed to treat. Now, this is not really a known fact. It doesn't say that in the PDR. It doesn't say that in the journals because the journals are actually supported by the drug companies. Yeah. So all the studies that get done are funded by the drug companies, and the drug companies aren't going to say that that's the case. Now, here's the other thing.
Bad for business.
What's that?
It's bad for business.
It'd be bad for business, I suppose. Not really, though. This is the #1 business in the history of the world.
Yeah, yes.
This is the #1 most profitable business in the history of planet Earth, for
and
real.
Increasing.
It's not hyperbole.
And it's not halting. It keeps going and accelerating.
Well, that's because people believe what it is that you said to introduce this thing. That somehow, when they're uncomfortable, they can go to a doctor and get the right medicine. There is no the right medicine made in a laboratory. The right medicine, the medicine we're looking for, the medicine that is the most powerful medicine ever created, is human connection. Period.
Yep.
If you are uncomfortable, it is amazing what can happen when you speak with another human who might even share your discomfort. They might have an answer for you that relieves you, or they might not. They might just be able to listen, or they might not. They might just be able to share your experience.
Yeah.
Human connection is at the heart of all healing, not diagnosis, and definitely not medication. I'm not here to bash diagnosis and medicine. It's fine. This is a major industry. It's working well. People line up out the door every morning at every pharmacy all across both of our countries to pick up their medicines in the morning and make sure they don't skip a day and take it and are pretty sure that it must be helping them because the doctor gave it to them.
Well, we're trained
But
that way, aren't we? We're
we
trained,
are trained
you
that
get a
way.
headache, you take a headache tablet. You could take a
Yeah.
paracetamol or something.
Well, or
But
something like that. We think that it's going to be that way. The problem, and it's actually sometimes true with the headache medicines as well, is that it's not even a Band-Aid. It's not a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid with a razor blade embedded in it.
whoa,
So
that's
yes,
pretty severe.
it works for a short period of time.
Yep.
And then the blood starts oozing out of the Band-Aid. And
Yeah.
then you can only do one thing because you think the Band-Aid is helping you. So there's only one thing you can do when the blood starts oozing out of Band-Aid. And that is buy a bigger Band-Aid. Increase the dose, add a
Yeah.
different drug, change to a different kind of Band-Aid,
Yeah. It's all
whatever.
guessing games, isn't it? Try this, try that, try this. But there's no strategy behind it. I
Oh no,
found,
there's plenty of strategies. We know our strategies. The strategies are well versed, and we're taught what to do when we hear my mind is racing, when we hear I'm anxious in a crowd, when we hear I've been depressed for most of the last 2 weeks, when we hear that we're scattered and can't finish projects, when we hear that we can't forget something that happened to us that was bad. When we hear those things, we're all on a algorithm. Us doctors know exactly what to treat you with at that point, or just don't ask questions like this about whether or not it's helpful. It isn't really ultimately helpful, even if it leaves you feeling relieved. One of the most amazing things that happens when you start medicating people is they come back the second week and they say this amazing combination of two sentences. Number one, the medicine helped. Number two, I'm feeling worse than ever. I'm like, how did you get both of those things? That happens often because the first thing that happens when you put a Band-Aid on, even if it has a razor blade on it, is you get, oh yeah, my cut has stopped bleeding. And then it starts bleeding more. So yes, it helped, and yes, it's worse than ever. You see, that's how the system is built. Now,
and
again,
then they're told, people with mental health conditions, when they get side effects, oh, that's your disease. They call it a disease,
it's
which
not a disease.
I found offensive,
Yeah,
because I have my eldest daughter was diagnosed with schizophrenia many years ago. She's actually on the autism spectrum, very strongly so, under the assessments. And so there's this overlap of symptoms of miscommunication constantly and her ability to interpret her environment, which makes her more anxious. But so anxiety is like so fundamental to many of the labels that we find in mental health.
it's
Sleep,
fundamental to humanity.
yeah, well, that's right. So I was thinking that the autism spectrum isn't a separate thing. It's actually the population just divided into shades of gray, right? You're either more and more and more autistic, or less and less and less autistic, more and more and more rigid, less and less and less rigid, more flexible. So it just slides up and down a scale, doesn't it?
It does, and it's all part of humanity. That's why I designed and created and founded Welcome to Humanity. You know, it's a self-explanatory brand, basically saying that whatever you're experiencing at any given time is just a trait associated with your fundamental nature of the human condition. That's it. That's all. And so, welcome to humanity. So, it's a great answer to what almost anyone could say at any time. You're like, I'm really sad. Welcome to humanity.
Yeah.
I'm really scared. Welcome to humanity. I'm
Or
really nervous.
or I can't sleep properly,
Welcome
and
to humanity.
I feel anxiety,
Welcome
and
to
or
humanity.
I feel anger. I don't know where it's
Yeah.
coming from.
Welcome to humanity.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look, they've been writing about this for years and years and years. You go back to the beginning of time and you'll see that the wise sages always wrote about this. They always wrote about how uncomfortable life can be. It can be very, very uncomfortable. You go all the way back to Marcus Aurelius, you can go back to Buddha, you go back to Jesus. All the people who ever had anything to say about anything always spoke to the fact that life is pretty miserable at its center point. And our job is to deal with this misery and to make some some adjustments and some balances. Now, another thing that all these writers said, and none of them, maybe a couple of them would defer this, is that human connection is the heart of healing. That when we connect with another human, there is a magic that happens. It's often called love. Love or healing. Like the idea that maybe you and I could actually be in love right now, like they're sharing an important topic and appreciation for each other, and get that idea that we're connecting with each other over an important topic. It's very inspiring, not only for me to be with you, or perhaps you to be with me, but for others to listen to us. We start connecting with humans on a pure frequency, and in that connection, poof, a beautiful thing happens. And that is whatever we were experiencing dissipates and sometimes reduces or even eliminates or even disappears. That really does happen. And it's much more powerful than anything that any laboratory in any country, anywhere has ever created. We got to keep that in mind and remember that arbitrarily, now you really hit this right in your introduction, arbitrarily diagnosing someone doesn't serve that person and doesn't serve you. And you know what happens? Say this. Like someone comes into the doctor and they say, I have dry skin, I eat too many peanuts, I drink way too much water, I'm a mess in a china shop, and I have a big nose. And they're like, okay, let me check it out. And they look it up, look it up, look it up. Oh, they found it. He says, you're an elephant. And you're like, oh, that's so great. I see. I have all the criteria of an elephant. And when that person walks out of that office knowing that they're an elephant, they start looking for circuses. They start looking for chains. And then they find out that they're elephant type 2 because they got big ears and a good memory. And now they're elephant type 2. They're really confirmed. So now they go home and they say, Mom, Dad, brother, guess what? I figured out what's wrong with me. They're like, what? I'm an elephant. And now if anyone disagrees with them at that point, they just know that they're wrong or they don't know the truth yet. That's all. They treat them like, nah, you don't know. I talked to a specialist. They told me. It's the way it is. And then it gets confirmed. The diagnosis gets confirmed inside of the prevailing conversation. People treat you like that condition, including, by the way, schizophrenia and ASD, and that person then takes on the personality of someone with that condition naturally.
I've seen that with my daughter.
I know you have.
Because, and I watched an interview right in the early years where a nurse sat there with a questionnaire and she said, do you hear voices? And my daughter, being very specific about words, said yes, because she had a very acute hearing and there were nurses in the other corner of the room talking to each other, whispering, and she could hear them. So she said yes because she could hear those voices. The nurse ticked the box on her questionnaire. The implied message was she hears voices that are not really there. So there's all this miscommunication that keeps going on in that system because of their checklists and their labeling.
Well,
And
watch
every
this.
time she has a new doctor appointment or an interview, the same questions come up. Do you hear voices? Like they really want her to say yes, but she doesn't. So now they've invented another term for a particular type of negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So you can have schizophrenia without the symptoms. It's just nuts, crazy.
Yeah. So watch this. We all hear voices. 100% of us. We just don't say it to the right people at the right time. If you don't think you're hearing voices, let's see, turn off the voice that you're hearing. Now, the voice in your head that's going, no, Dr. Fred, I don't have a voice, that's a voice.
Yeah.
It is.
I have to hear my language voice in order for me to write anything down. I have to hear it first.
We just call it intuition. We call it something else. We call it something else, but we don't come into an emergency room and tell a doctor that we're hearing voices because that would trip the whole thing.
Yep.
But it's the same voices. The voices that say you don't look good in the morning, or the voices that say you look fit and phenomenal, or that person looks mean, or something like that, that's a voice. It's the same voices.
It's your own mind.
It's like my wife always says, we just have a skill set of not saying the wrong thing to the wrong people at the wrong time.
Yeah. That's it.
That's all it really is. We're all hearing the same stuff.
So we get kind of programmed. It's a programmed reality. So if we are fed a particular paradigm or narrative or information, and we believe it, then we start to manufacture that reality. This is
100%.
how powerful the mind is, and how powerful
100%.
placebo effect is, isn't it? If you believe
It's not
something.
even placebo. It's very powerful, and placebo suggests that whatever you took didn't have any effect, but of course it does have an effect. Just like what you just said, it was brilliant. Here's the other problem with all of this. The medications that they created for us actually do cause the symptoms that are marketed to treat. So if you want to hear voices, try taking your daughter's medicine. No kidding. Try taking antipsychotics and tell me you won't hear voices then. You will, because these medicines actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. They do.
They change the brain.
It's a great business model. It's the first chemical imbalance. See, we think we have a chemical imbalance, and that's why we're taking medicine. But we take medicine, and that actually does imbalance our chemicals on purpose. We're expecting it to. We're expecting it to right the wrong. We're expecting it to be the other side of the double balance beam. But it's not. It's its first chemical imbalance of all of them is the medications we take, and that causes the symptoms it's marketed to treat.
And over time, over long-term use, it actually causes cognitive decline. That's how dangerous it is for the brain.
Of course, it definitely does. But that's good because we got medicine for that too.
Yes.
It's no problem. Same
Yeah.
company, no problem.
Multi-medicines,
We have
polypharmacy.
medicines for it all, and it's not medicine's fault. Here's the problem. I'm not mad at medicines. I'm not mad at the industry. I'm not mad at big pharma. I'm not mad at insurance companies. I'm not mad at doctors. I'm not mad at any of them. They're all doing their jobs exactly as they should. I'm not mad at anyone. Here's the point. I've been looking at this for 20 years. How is it that we can disrupt this cycle? How can we do that? The way that we can do that is reminding people that there's nothing wrong with them in the first place. Never was, never will be. Nothing wrong with them inherently. Never was, never will be. Nothing wrong with them. Nothing. There never was, and there never will be, because there's nothing wrong with them. All that's really happening is we're all trying to stumble, tumble, and bumble through this crazy life that we have, and we don't know how to do it, and some people think they're outside the bounds of normal when normal has never even been defined. How do we have the audacity to call somebody abnormal, not normal, when we don't even have a definition of normal? That is just amazing. That is really just audacious.
Yes, I
right?
think most people that encounter these issues are feeling quite lonely and isolated and don't know how to reach out. So there are problems, as you said, with connection with others,
Yeah.
and fears about what are they going to think about me? Are they going to criticize me? So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of other back chat going on in the mind, which leads to anxiety and worse stress symptoms. And the more stress and anxiety you feel, the more magnesium you lose in your urine, so you become mineral deficient, and that leads to more health problems. So it's a downward spiral. And it leads me to the question of symptoms. Why does the body give us symptoms? What's the purpose of having a symptom?
Well, it's not called a symptom. It might be called a sign. It might be called an indicator. It might be called a
A
message.
signal, yeah.
A signal, indeed. And so when we're feeling nervous or we're feeling afraid, it's our body telling us to, pay attention. And if we're feeling angry, it's our body telling us that there's something here that's disruptive to how we think things should go. There's just ways to understand this that don't have it be anything wrong. And ultimately, the answer to all of this, at least one answer that always works, is welcome to humanity. So this idea that people feel isolated or afraid of how their say something might be seen by or heard by others, there's nobody who doesn't have that. You have that, I have that, we all have that. If you or I were just to turn away and just be like totally deny and totally like dismiss each other, it would really hurt the other person. They'd be like, what the hell happened there?
Yeah.
We all have a sensitivity
We
in
don't want
all
to
the
be
areas.
rejected.
No, we really don't. And so it's so important that we don't want to be rejected. You know, we were taught at a very young age in conventional education how to be someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. It's very odd that we've been taught that. And, you know, the crack in the cement has grown bigger and bigger over time, and we've never gone back and fixed it. So now we often are acting like someone we're really not in order to protect the person that we are. It doesn't work. It's the most ludicrous, preposterous, absurd thing. The craziest strategy ever is to try to be someone you're not. And it doesn't work because you're still going to be dismissed even when you're acting like somebody that you're not. There's still a number of people who aren't going to like what you say and are going to be pointing at you and going to drop you off the island and all of that. So it reached a point, you know, it's reached a point now, and I think this has also happened over time, but maybe more so now than ever, where some of us are actually saying and writing things that even we don't believe. It's just insane. That is beyond a lie. We're actually writing, saying, and representing things that even we don't believe. And why would we do that? Because of what you said. Fear of being thrown out, fear of being dismissed, fear of
You're
being
being ostracized.
exactly. Exactly.
And I find this also in professional circles,
For sure.
scientists who've come up with a different way of looking at the truth of what is, but it's outside of the status quo and standard thought. The first thing that happens is that they're ridiculed. But,
Yeah,
over
naturally.
time, eventually the truth bubbles to the surface and it can't be ridiculed anymore. But, in the beginning, you've got to be very brave if you've come up with a new discovery that others don't agree with.
Exactly. So that's just a natural course of coming up with a discovery is the first time a discovery is heard, you will be ridiculed and then you'll be even targeted. And, it's part of the package. If, and medicine has shifted the nature of medicine, of Western medicine, for which Australia is part of, is, this concept of evidence-based medicine. So what all that is exactly what you're saying. If it's evidence-based, the only thing you're allowed to use are things that have been done before and been proven correct before. So if you come up with something new that's bigger and better than that, and it's not evidence-based, it'll be discarded and dismissed before it even hits the table.
But there's always evidence because the truth is always the truth. It's how we interpret it, isn't it? It's the way you look at it from a particular perspective.
Well, again, I'm not sure. Sometimes there's ways. The truth is always the truth, but if what I'm saying here is the truth, I can tell you that it's not everyone speaking like me. I know that, and I'm not really saying anything that's that startling. In the end, what I'm saying is not that controversial. You know, when I learned this, I was 3.
Yep.
That's when we all learn this. There's nothing I'm saying that is any different than what we learned when we were 3. It's really important to get it. It's like we already knew that what does a 3-year-old want more than anything? They want connection.
Yep.
What does a 1-year-old want more than
Mum,
anything? They want connection.
dad, friends,
Exactly.
social
And that
connection.
we already know that. And just because they think out, it's a function of the diagnoser. It's, diagnosis is a function of the diagnoser, meaning a doctor is there, let's call it a doctor or a therapist or whatever, a diagnostician of some level, is there and listens to someone else and determines that they have either said the proper buzzword to fall into a particular bushel basket, or they're outside the realm of what I think is a normal human being, and therefore they must be sick. I have a limited boundary of what I have seen in my life of people, you right? And I think this person lands outside of what my limited boundary says is normal. Therefore, since of all the powers vested in me, I get to diagnose that person as being odd, different, diseased, ill. You know,
Yep.
yeah.
How should we be looking at it? If not inside a category or a box, how do we approach it with such variation in the population to help people find their own
Yeah.
balance,
Yeah.
taking into account their unique, because everyone's different and unique.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a different set of cards they
Yeah.
got when they came into the world. So
Yeah.
we need to know how to play them in the game.
Yeah.
How do we help someone discover their pros and cons, their gifts or their weak areas they need to improve on? How do we get this self reflection going?
Yeah. Great question. So the first place to stand from is maybe there's nothing wrong with them. It's really important that you stand directly from there and own it as an energy, as a reality. Even that person, even the person that you really are sure there's something wrong with, even that person, even the person who everyone knows there's something wrong with, even that person.
Well, they have
There's
pain. That's an overriding symptom. So, when you're caring for others, you don't want them to go through pain and anguish, and you look for something to fix it, to
okay.
help them get back to balance.
All right. So the best way to do that is to empathize and be there with their pain.
Hmm.
That's it. You don't have to give them a pill or an answer. The best way to manage anybody's pain, the first thing to do is to be there with their pain.
And
Really just and share
acknowledge.
that.
Yeah.
Acknowledge and share and empathize.
Yeah.
Really be there. Now, once you have done that, you'll get a tremendous amount of healing right there. Now, how do we help people balance? Let's look at Buddha for a second. So Buddha sat underneath a tree for, I don't know, a lot of days, and he worked out everything, right? He worked out all of life. He reconciled almost everything. He took care of business, and then he then he did some writing, and he did some traveling, and everybody started to follow him, and we all still follow. A lot of people still think he's the coolest. I think he's pretty cool.
Yeah. He taught meditation. That was
He's
a
pretty
good thing
cool.
for humanity.
Right. So meditation, we'll get right back to that in a moment. And there were people before Buddha who were meditating, but let's just get back to this in a moment. The one thing he actually got up from the tree when he was still incomplete. Imagine this. He's under a tree. He's got it all figured out. And then there's a couple things that are still nagging him. And he's like, I don't know. I'll sit here another day. I'm going to work on this one. And finally, he's like, screw it. I'm getting up. And that one thing that was there when he got up was that life is inherently miserable. He still left us with that. Life is inherently miserable. He left us with that. He did not fix that one. That there is misery to deal with in this life. It's inherently miserable. And if we let it go, we will be miserable. So there's things we must do to deal with what is inherently obliquely miserable. One of the things that he thought, you're right, is meditation. So meditation became something very real at Buddha, but it was also real before. There was many others long before Buddha who were still meditating. And in meditation, we sit still and we sit silent and we start pursuing something called equanimity. We start pursuing the fact that we are truly undamageable by our external world. We are impenetrable. We are immovable. We are unshakable by the external world. We start really getting that when we meditate each day. We get a meditative practice in place, and we start realizing, I am here. There's my emotions. There's my feelings. There's my thoughts. There's my physical sensation. There's the chaos in the world. There's the terrible treacheries going on over there. There's wars over there, and there's racism over there. There's sex trafficking over there. They're all here in my life, and I'm here. And I don't have to be upended by my external or internal experiences. I can just see them as happening in this life, allowing me to find balance where balance would not be due if I jumped on any of these things.
Because it allows you to be more objective. You can be the observer, looking at things more dispassionately without
Exactly.
that
And
reactive emotion.
not less connected, even though you're right here. I am, very passionate about the end of some of the things I just said. It'd be really, really fantastic. I stand for that immensely, but I'm not them. I can stay balanced from here and get the complexity of what it is to be alive. There's a lot of things going on, a lot. How much time would it take for me and you to come up with 100 reasons to be depressed? About 4 minutes.
We should do more podcasts.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah, because the simple things, the truth is always simple, isn't it? But sometimes we need to go explain it in lots of different ways. till we eventually see all the different perspectives of that truth. So we're coming to an end shortly. I'd really love to talk so much more about this with you because it's a huge topic.
Yeah.
But I think this has been a really good overview. If people want to learn more, read what you have written and your books and your courses, where do they go?
So there's a couple places to go. I buzz around social media. I'm upgrading my YouTube now, and I'm working on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn, and I hate Facebook, but I show up there every day. Anyways, I do that. Um, and then I have these two websites, Dr. Fred, drfred360.com, and welcometohumanity.net. And those are both cool websites. One's a concise version of the larger one, Welcome to Humanity. It's a little bit the one's very slick and one's very kind of comprehensive. But they cover the same material. And then I'm also creating a work group. So I have a school group, SKOOL. I have a school community that I have a few hundred people in, and I'm moving that to a Mighty Networks community, which I don't have the URL quite yet, but I'm extremely excited about my Mighty Networks community. But I
It'll
can't
be
tell you
on
the
your
URL.
website when it's updated, though.
When it's up,
Yeah.
it'll show up on my website for certain. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that sounds pretty exciting. We need a lot more of you. I hope you're training a lot of other professionals to adopt those wonderful strategies
That's
to
the purpose
welcome,
of the school group. Yeah, that's the
well,
purpose of putting people together.
yeah, welcome to humanity. I think the big goal of life itself and why we have these cycles of ups and downs, we have to learn to deal with it, and that makes us wiser over time, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. Yep. I mean, how do we deal with it and expect to have, Buddha said it. You're going to deal with some misery.
Yeah.
Hello.
And you have to accept it and go, well, it is the way it is, and move on. You can't be stuck in the past because
That's
then
right.
you keep taking that misery with you and polluting what's coming up in the future.
Indeed.
So we need
Exactly.
to
Well
just
said.
realize how powerful our minds are and learn to drive it like we drive a car, know what the tools are for.
Exactly. Well said. 100%.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I look
My
forward to our
pleasure.
next podcast. This is
I'd love to
just an
come on again. Thank you.
amazing topic and it will help many people, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for finding me. Thanks for getting this done. Thanks for coming across the big pond to get to me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you too. I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and Magnesium special offers at electramagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.